I need to finish the hardwood install around my masonry fireplace, and so I am going to cut out all of this wood and install a header that goes this direction and kind of ties in around all this stone. So I already have it marked out, all my lines square, and what we are using today is the Kreg track saw. So this is going to be my first time using the track saw with a guide. I have already got it all set up, which that is in another video. The video detailing how to cut this so your cuts are splinter free. So what I'll be doing is I'll take this guide and I'm going to line it up with my line, and then I'm going to cut a depth of 3/4 inch, and then we'll pry up all these little pieces, and then we will cut a long piece that's going to go this direction, and we'll miter it and cut it all the way around this fireplace. Features of the Kreg track saw: one, you have your depth adjustment, which you just undo this thumb screw and you just have to kind of wing it right where you want it. You know, it's got pre-marked spot for 3/4 inch ply. You know, we're going to be setting it around 3/4 inch, right around there. You got an angle adjustment right here. You have some adjustments here to adjust how it rides on the track. And you have some extra tools. You might need that for changing out the blade and adjusting the splinter stop. We also have an anti-kickback switch. So right now it's off, and you can slide this back and forth, but then you can turn that on and it'll only go forward, it won't go backwards. You also have a speed adjustment right here. So you can adjust that down slow or really fast, depending on the type of material you are cutting into. And then it has a vacuum connection, or it also has a little dust bag. And here's that dust bag. It's a pretty nice bag, but you know, it fills up pretty quick, and you're still going to get a bunch of debris scattering all over the place. And so the best thing is to put a vacuum on it. The guide has an anti-slip material, so you don't have to clamp it down. So like once you put it down in there, it stays really good on the material. So what we'll do is we'll turn it around and we'll line this blue edge with my line I have drawn on the floor. And that's exactly where it's going to cut. So this is a 62-inch guide rail, and I wish they came in some smaller sizes, because let me show you over here what I had to do. So our home had original hardwood in the bedrooms, and when they installed it, they didn't install this very straight. Like it was kind of at an angle. So you had all these little scallop cuts, and some of them stuck out a little further than the others. So I had to cut all that back. It'd been nice to have a guide that was maybe 24 inches long to put in between the doorway here, so I can get most of those cut, and then at the ends use the multi-tool to cut it out. So what I had to end up doing in this situation is I just put a square down on the floor, kind of right where I need it, and I just took a multi-tool and just cut all those straight and then routed it out. So that's one way to do it. It's not as exact. As you can see, I have some gaps because I wasn't able to get the straightest cut with the multi-tool. But my buddy Tim that does hardwood floors, he says putty is your buddy. So once this all gets sanded down, we'll putty it up. Now this track saw is my first track saw. I have used a Festool track saw a long time ago to cut a couple things. It was my friend's. But you know, I don't do this type of work professionally or anything. This is like DIY. You know, every once in a while I'm going to use that. So I figured this was a good option. I was looking at some really cheap saws on Amazon, and I came across this one at Lowe's that was on sale, and so I picked it up, and I think it's a really good value. So now we're going to get some action shots. I'm going to get it set up, and I'm going to start cutting away and see how well this works. Now the only shop vac I have with a small hose is this one, but it doesn't have a rubber coupling, so I just taped it. So that's pretty ghetto, but that's just how it is with DIY. You gotta do whatever you can to make it work. Now here's the first cut, and I forgot to turn the vacuum on, so you'll see a bunch of dust flying around. And don't do what I did. I forgot to tuck up my hoodie pull strings. You can see them dangling down. You never want to have those dangle down when you're cutting with a tool. So now I realize that I forgot to turn the vacuum on. So I turn the vacuum on and I go to finish my cut. And be careful because I go to move here and I accidentally bump the guide. Oh, see, I bumped it. So now I got to stop and reposition the guide along my line and start the cut again. All right, so I made a pretty good cut right on the line all the way across. So then here I'll run the saw that way, cut that way. Then I'll get a multi-tool and just kind of trim where the round blade kind of comes up and it's not cut. And same thing over here. I got to get to this point because the saw wouldn't go all the way up to the brick, and cut that with a multi-tool. So I got the majority of those blocks of the, got a majority of that wood cut. So here's a great example of the track being almost too long. So it's 62 inches, which is nice, but man, it barely fit in there to get this last cut that I had. And then since I'm cutting on that side, I had to take off the hose, the vacuum, to get that last couple inches because it was binding up, even no matter how I turned it. So I just undid it, and it got a little dusty in here. Not too bad though. And I just did it for that last 2 inches. One potential drawback when you're doing work like this, where you're cutting in around something, if you're doing like a sheet good, it's no big deal. But like, I didn't want to make any type of overcuts because if I cut too far, then that's cutting into good wood that I don't want to, cut out. And so sometimes on these, depending on where you're cutting, when you're coming up to the end and whenever you're plunged, you can't see where the saw blade is and where it's cutting. And so you could accidentally cut too far or not cut enough and then have to plunge again and go back and forth. And that's just kind of the nature of the saw because we want it to be all sealed up so it can collect the dust really well. If it was a little more open where you could see where the edge of the blade is cutting, then you're going to get more dust everywhere. I particularly had that problem right here when I was coming up to the edge. I mean, I couldn't see it without walking around the saw, which is not really the safest thing to do. But I just kind of stopped right there. I got this one a lot closer. I had the same type of problem here where I had this wall in the way, and when I was starting, I had to start here and work that way. Once the tool is plunged, the safety device that keeps things from binding, I couldn't go backwards, so I had to unplunge it, come back, and just kind of guess because I needed to stop right here. But we got it done. So overall, I think this Kreg track saw is really good for the DIYer. It's really sturdy. It's very powerful. It feels really good to use. It's got a lot of safety features, and with Kreg stuff, it's they have a whole ecosystem of other tools that can work with that. So yeah, I think it's really good buy. I'm glad I bought it. I'll be using it to cut down some plywoods. I got to make some cabinets. We're doing some work in the kitchen, and I need to make some pantries, so I'll probably be making my own cabinets for that. So we'll see how that turns out. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the Kreg track saw, don't hesitate to reach out in the comments.